The record had stood for 20 years. 20 years since Master Sergeant Danny Hayes made the 2,847-meter shot that earned him a place in sniper history and a bronze plaque on the wall of the Fort Bragg Marksmanship Center. Hayes' record, 2,847M, unbroken since 2004. Every elite marksman who visited the range read those words and knew they were looking at something that might never be surpassed. Wind conditions, equipment limitations, and the sheer physics of long-range shooting made anything beyond Hayes' achievement seem impossible. Until morning when a woman in civilian clothes walked onto the range, studied the bronze plaque for a long moment, and quietly asked the range master if she could give it a try. What happened next lasted exactly 4.2 seconds and changed everything the military thought they knew about the limits of human precision. Welcome to those who left a trace. Before we dive into this incredible story of hidden talent, broken barriers, and the moment when impossible became inevitable, tell me in the comments what city you're watching from today. And if you believe that legends can emerge in the most unexpected places, hit that subscribe button. These stories remind us that greatness doesn't always announce itself with fanfare. Fort Bragg's Advanced Marksmanship Training Center was a testament to precision, discipline, and the endless pursuit of perfection that defined American military sniper programs. The facility sprawled across 2,000 acres of North Carolina pine forest, with ranges that extended to distances most civilian shooters could barely comprehend. Here, the nation's most elite marksmen came to test their skills against targets that pushed the boundaries of what was physically possible with rifle, scope, and human capability. Range 7 was the crown jewel of the facility, a 3,000-meter range that was used only for record attempts and advanced training exercises that required the kind of precision that separated good snipers from legendary ones. The range was equipped with computerized wind measurement systems, ballistic computers, and target systems that could track impact points to within millimeters. But for all its technological sophistication, Range 7 was dominated by one simple bronze plaque that had been mounted on the wall of the observation tower 20 years earlier. Master Sergeant Daniel J. Hayes, 2,847 meters, September 15, 2004, current range record. The plaque represented more than just an impressive shot. It embodied the culmination of decades of sniper training, equipment development, and the kind of individual skill that couldn't be taught from textbooks or developed through standard military training programs. Hayes had been one of those rare individuals whose combination of physical ability, mental discipline, and intuitive understanding of ballistics had allowed him to achieve something that military scientists had calculated as being at the very edge of human possibility. In the 20 years since Hayes had set his record, hundreds of elite snipers had attempted to surpass it. Army Rangers, Navy SEALs, Marine Scout snipers, and Air Force Special Operations marksmen had all tried to extend their effective range beyond Hayes' achievement. Some had come close, within 50 or 100 meters, but none had been able to account for all the variables that made extreme long-range shooting as much art as science. The morning that would change everything began like any other training day at Range 7. Master Sergeant Cole Patterson, the range master, arrived at 0600 hours to prepare for a training exercise involving 12 members of the Army's elite 1st Special Forces Operational Detachment Delta. The Delta operators were scheduled to conduct long-range precision shooting exercises as part of their advanced training regimen. Work that would test their capabilities at distances that exceeded most combat scenarios, but prepare them for situations where conventional engagement rules didn't apply. Patterson had been the range master at Fort Bragg for 8 years, long enough to have worked with some of the most skilled marksmen in the American military. He had observed thousands of shots, supervised dozens of record attempts, and developed an eye for identifying shooters whose capabilities exceeded normal training standards. But nothing in his experience had prepared him for the woman who approached the range complex at 0647 hours, walking with the purposeful stride of someone who belonged exactly where she was going. She appeared to be in her mid-30s, dressed in civilian clothes that suggested outdoor experience rather than military service. Hiking boots, cargo pants, and a lightweight jacket that looked like it had seen significant use in field conditions. She carried no equipment bag, No rifle case. No indication that she was there for anything more than observation. But something in her posture, in the way she studied the range layout and target systems, suggested knowledge that went beyond casual interest. Patterson watched her approach the observation tower, noting the systematic way she examined the wind flags, range markers, and ballistic measurement equipment that lined Range 7. Her attention wasn't casual or touristy. She was conducting the kind of detailed reconnaissance that experienced shooters perform when preparing for precision work in unfamiliar environments. "Morning," Patterson said as she reached the observation platform. "Are you here for the Delta training exercise?" She turned toward him with a slight smile that suggested both friendliness and something he couldn't quite identify. Confidence, maybe, or the kind of calm certainty that came from knowing things that other people didn't. "Actually, I was hoping to speak with someone about the range record. I understand it's been standing for 20 years. Patterson nodded toward the bronze plaque that dominated the observation tower. Master Sergeant Hayes. 2,847 meters, September 2004. Still the longest confirmed shot on this range, and probably one of the longest confirmed shots in military history. She studied the plaque with the focused attention of someone reading technical specifications rather than admiring an achievement. What were the conditions that day? Wind, temperature, humidity? The question surprised Patterson, not because they were inappropriate, but because they demonstrated understanding of the variables that affected extreme long-range shooting. Most visitors asked about the rifle Hayes had used or the target he had hit. This woman was asking about atmospheric conditions that could affect bullet trajectory over distances, where minor variations in environmental factors could mean the difference between success and failure. According to the record documentation, wind was variable at 5 to 8 miles per hour. Temperature was 72 degrees Fahrenheit, humidity at 65%. Not ideal conditions, but not the worst we've seen either. She nodded, processing information with the methodical attention of someone whose knowledge allowed her to understand the significance of those specific conditions. And the rifle system? Custom .338 Lapua Magnum, match-grade ammunition, Schmidt and Bender 5-25x56 scope. Top-of-the-line equipment, but nothing that isn't available to qualified military marksmen. I see. She was quiet for a moment, continuing to study the range layout and target systems. Would it be possible for me to attempt a record? Patterson stared at her, trying to process a request that didn't make sense in any context he could understand. "Ma'am, I'm not sure I understand. Are you a qualified military marksman? Do you have authorization to use military facilities?" She reached into her jacket and produced credentials that Patterson recognized immediately. Department of Defense Civilian Contractor Identification, with security clearances that indicated access to classified programs and specialized military facilities. The credentials were legitimate, but they didn't explain why a civilian contractor would be interested in attempting a military shooting record that had defeated some of the most skilled marksmen in the armed forces. "I have authorization to use military training facilities as part of my consulting work," she said, showing him documentation that confirmed her access rights. "I specialize in ballistics research and precision shooting systems development. Attempting the record would be valuable research for projects I'm currently working on." Patterson examined her credentials, noting that her security clearance was higher than his own and that her access authorization included exactly the kind of advanced training facilities represented by Range 7. But authorization to use the facilities was different from having the skills needed to make effective use of them. "Ma'am, with respect, extreme long-range shooting requires years of training and experience that can be developed through civilian marksmanship programs. The Hayes record represents the culmination of military sniper training at the highest levels." Her response surprised him with its directness. "Master Sergeant Patterson, I appreciate your concern about my qualifications, but I believe my background has prepared me for exactly this type of challenge." Something in her tone suggested that she wasn't making a casual request or overestimating her capabilities. She spoke with the measured confidence of someone who had assessed the requirements of the task and had concluded that success was not just possible but probable. "What rifle system would you be using?" Patterson asked, beginning to understand that this conversation was moving toward an actual record attempt rather than theoretical discussion. She walked to a vehicle that Patterson hadn't noticed earlier, parked at the edge of the range complex in a location that suggested she had been observing the facility for some time before approaching the observation tower. From the vehicle, she retrieved a rifle case that looked civilian in origin but was constructed to military specifications for transporting precision equipment. The rifle, she revealed, was immediately recognizable to Patterson as a high-end civilian precision shooting system, a custom .300 Winchester Magnum built on a Remington 700 action with Macmillan stock and a Night forescope that represented the current state of civilian long-range shooting technology. The system was impressive, but it wasn't the kind of specialized military equipment that had been used to establish the existing range records. "That's a beautiful rifle," Patterson said, examining the weapon with the appreciation of someone who understood precision shooting equipment. "But it's not quite the same category as the systems our military snipers use for extreme long-range work." "I understand," she replied, "but I believe it will be adequate for the task." Patterson found himself in an unusual situation. The woman had proper authorization to use the facilities. She possessed equipment that was suitable for precision shooting, and her questions demonstrated knowledge that exceeded casual familiarity with long-range marksmanship. But nothing in his experience suggested that a civilian, regardless of their credentials or equipment, could seriously challenge a military record that had stood for 20 years. "All right," he decided, "let's see what you can do." The setup for a record attempt at range 7 required more than just positioning a rifle and selecting a target. Patterson activated computerized wind measurement systems that would provide real-time data about atmospheric conditions across the 3,000-meter range, ensuring that any shot would be documented with the environmental data necessary to validate its difficulty and significance. The target for record attempts was a standard military silhouette position at the maximum range of the facility, 3,000 meters from a firing line. At that distance, the target appeared as a barely visible speck even through high-powered optics, and successful engagement required calculations that accounted for bullet drop, wind drift, atmospheric pressure, temperature variations, and a dozen other factors that could affect projectile trajectory over the nearly 2-mile flight path. Patterson was required by range protocols to witness and document any record attempt, ensuring that the shot was conducted under controlled conditions that would validate its authenticity if successful. He positioned himself at the observation station where he could monitor both the shooter and the target systems that would record impact location and timing. The woman, who had introduced herself simply as Miss Chun, began her preparation with systematic attention to detail that impressed Patterson despite his skepticism about her chances of success. She checked atmospheric readings from the computerized systems, studied wind patterns across the range using high-power binoculars, and conducted equipment checks that demonstrated familiarity with precision shooting procedures. Her approach to the rifle was methodical and professional, with equipment handling that suggested extensive experience with precision shooting systems. She adjusted the scope's parallax settings to the extreme range, checked the rifle zero through a series of dry-fire exercises, and positioned herself in a shooting stance that optimized stability while minimizing the physical stress that could affect accuracy during the extended aiming process required for extreme long-range shots. "Current conditions," Patterson announced, reading from the computerized monitoring systems. "Wind variable from southwest at 6 to 10 miles per hour, temperature 74 degrees, humidity 58%, barometric pressure 30.12 inches. Range is clear for record attempt." Chin nodded acknowledgement and settled into her firing position, but she didn't immediately prepare to shoot. Instead, she spent several minutes observing wind patterns through her scope, studying the movement of grass and vegetation at various distances along the range, building a mental map of atmospheric conditions that would affect her shot across the nearly 2-mile range. Patterson had observed this kind of preparation before, but only for military snipers whose training had emphasized the importance of environmental awareness in extreme long-range shooting. Chen's approach suggested knowledge that typically required years of specialized military training to develop. When she finally prepared to fire, her movements were deliberate and unhurried. She adjusted her scope's elevation and windage settings based on calculations that Patterson couldn't observe, but which appeared to be based on systematic analysis of the conditions she had been studying. Her breathing pattern steadied into the controlled rhythm that marked experienced precision shooters, and her body position became motionless in a way that suggested complete preparation for the shot. Patterson raised the binoculars, focusing on the target that was barely visible even through his high-powered optics. At 3,000 meters, observing bullet impact required careful attention and optimal viewing conditions, and he wanted to ensure that he could provide accurate documentation if Chen's shot achieved the kind of precision necessary for a new record. The shot, when it came, was anticlimactic in a way that characterized exceptional marksmanship. There was no dramatic pause, no visible tension, just a sharp crack of the rifle followed by the long silence that accompanied projectile flight time over extreme distances. Patterson kept his binoculars focused on the target, waiting for the impact that would determine whether Chen's attempt had been successful. At 3.7 seconds after the shot, Patterson saw the unmistakable spray of debris that marked bullet impact on the target backstop. But what he saw through his binoculars made him lower the optics and look again, certain that he had misinterpreted what he was observing. The target silhouette had been hit dead center. "Impact confirmed," Patterson announced, his voice carrying disbelief despite his professional obligation to provide accurate observation. "Center mass hit on the 3,000-meter target." Chen set down her rifle and looked toward Patterson with the same calm expression she had maintained throughout the preparation and shooting process. "What's the official distance measurement?" Patterson consulted the range's computerized measurement systems, which use laser range-finding technology to provide precise distance calculations for record documentation. 2,987 meters. That's... He paused, checking the calculation again to ensure accuracy. "That's 140 meters farther than the existing record." The silence that followed was filled with implications that neither of them immediately addressed. Chen had not just broken the 20-year-old range record. She had shattered it by a margin that exceeded the accumulated improvements in equipment and technique that military snipers had achieved over 2 decades of attempting to surpass Hayes' achievement. "Would you like to attempt confirmation shots?" Patterson asked, following protocols that required multiple successful hits to validate record claims involving extreme precision. "If you think it's necessary," Chen replied, but her tone suggested that she considered the question purely procedural rather than reflecting any uncertainty about her ability to repeat the performance. Patterson was beginning to understand that he was observing something that exceeded his experience and possibly his understanding of what civilian marksmanship capabilities could achieve. But his responsibility was to document what he observed rather than to explain how it was possible. "Let's go with 2 confirmation shots, just to make sure the first one wasn't luck." Chen nodded and prepared for her second attempt with the same methodical attention to detail that had characterized her first shot. But Patterson noticed that her preparation time was shorter now, suggesting that she had already developed understanding of the range conditions that eliminated the need for extensive reanalysis. The second shot followed the same pattern as the first. Careful preparation, controlled execution, and impact that Patterson could observe clearly through his binoculars. Center mass hit on the 3,000-meter target, with precision that suggested not luck, but repeatable skill. The third shot was identical to the first 2. Patterson lowered his binoculars and looked at Chun with expression that combined professional respect and complete bewilderment. "Ma'am, I've been supervising marksmanship training for 8 years, and I've never seen shooting like that. 3 consecutive center mass hits at nearly 3,000 meters with civilian equipment on your first visit to this range." Chun secured her rifle and began packing her equipment with the same systematic approach she had brought to the shooting itself. "Master Sergeant Patterson, I appreciate your professional supervision and documentation. Will the paperwork for the new record be processed through normal channels?" Patterson was still trying to process what he had witnessed. "Ma'am, before we discuss paperwork, I need to ask, what's your background? Where did you develop this level of marksmanship capability?" Chun paused in her equipment packing and looked at Patterson with expression that suggested she was considering how much information was appropriate to share. "I've been working in ballistics research and precision shooting development for 15 years. My project had required extensive field work in environments where accuracy was measured in millimeters rather than inches." "Military projects." "Classified projects," she replied, which was answer enough for Patterson to understand that further questions about her background wouldn't produce information he was cleared to receive. But Patterson had one more question that he felt obligated to ask. "Ma'am, why today? The Hayes record has been standing for 20 years. What made you decide to attempt it now?" Chen finished packing her equipment and looked toward the bronze plaque that no longer represented the range record. "Master Sergeant Patterson, some records exist to be broken. They represent limitations that were accurate when they were established, but which don't reflect current capabilities. I thought it was time to update the standard." She thanked Patterson for his professional assistance, confirmed that the appropriate documentation would be forwarded to range headquarters, and walked back to her vehicle with the same purposeful stride that had characterized her arrival. Patterson remained at the observation station, staring at the target system data that confirmed what he had witnessed. 3 consecutive hits at 2,987 meters, precision that exceeded anything in his experience, achieved by a civilian contractor whose background remained largely mysterious, but whose capabilities had just redefined his understanding of what was possible in precision shooting. 20 minutes later, when the Delta operators arrived for their scheduled training exercise, Patterson was still trying to process what he had observed. The bronze plaque that had dominated Range 7 for 20 years suddenly seemed like ancient history, a marker of achievements that had been impressive in their time, but which were no longer relevant to current capabilities. "Range Master," one of the Delta operators approached Patterson at the observation station. "We're ready to begin our long-range exercises. Any special considerations for today's training?" Patterson looked at the computerized systems that still displayed the data from Chen's record attempts, then at the bronze plaque that would soon be replaced with new recognition of significantly improved standards. "Actually," Patterson said, "I think we need to recalibrate our expectations about what's possible at extreme range." The news of the new range record spread through Fort Bragg's marksmanship community with a speed that marked genuinely extraordinary events. Within hours, instructors, advanced students, and visiting personnel were discussing the civilian contractor who had shattered a 20-year-old record on her first visit to Range 7, using equipment that was impressive but not exceptional by military standards. The story that emerged through informal networks was fragmentary but intriguing. A woman with classified credentials and ballistics expertise had achieved shooting precision that exceeded anything in recent military experience, then disappeared back into whatever classified projects had developed her extraordinary capabilities. Master Sergeant Patterson found himself fielding questions from personnel who wanted to understand how a civilian had accomplished something that had defeated the most skilled military marksman for 2 decades. His answers were factual but limited. He could describe what he had observed, but he couldn't explain how it had been possible or what kind of background could produce such exceptional capabilities. She knew what she was doing, Patterson told Colonel James Morrison, the senior officer responsible for Fort Bragg's advanced marksmanship programs. Her equipment handling, her approach to environmental assessment, her shooting technique, everything suggested extensive experience with precision shooting at extreme ranges. Colonel Morrison reviewed the documentation from Chen's record attempt, studying the atmospheric conditions, equipment specifications, and target impact data that validated the achievement. This level of precision isn't just impressive. It's at the edge of what current ballistics theory suggests should be possible with the equipment she was using. "Sir, the shooting was flawless. 3 consecutive center mass hits at nearly 3,000 meters, with consistency that suggested she could have continued hitting the target as long as ammunition lasted." Morrison was quiet for several minutes, processing implications that extended beyond simple marksmanship achievement. "Sergeant Patterson, I want you to research this woman's background as thoroughly as security clearances allow. Someone with this level of capability doesn't develop these skills in civilian shooting programs." The research that Patterson conducted over the following days revealed tantalizing but incomplete information about Chen's professional background. Her credentials were legitimate and her security clearances were current, but the specific projects she worked on were classified at levels that prevented detailed inquiry without specialized authorization. What Patterson could determine was that Chen's work involved ballistics research for projects that required precision measurement and testing under field conditions that simulated extreme range combat scenarios. Her professional assignments had taken her to locations where accuracy requirements exceeded normal military training standards, and her consulting work involved developing and testing equipment that pushed the boundaries of what was possible in precision shooting applications. But the most significant information Patterson discovered was that Chen's record attempt at Fort Bragg had not been casual or spontaneous. Records indicated that she had been observing and analyzing Range 7 for several weeks before her visit, studying environmental conditions, equipment capabilities, and the specific requirements necessary to surpass the existing record. Her achievement had been the result of careful planning, extensive preparation, and capabilities that had been developed through years of work in applications where precision shooting was not recreational or competitive, but operationally critical for projects whose nature remained classified, but whose requirements had produced marksmanship skills that exceeded anything in conventional military training. "Sir," Patterson reported to Colonel Morrison, "I believe Ms. Chen's record attempt was part of a larger research project. She wasn't just trying to break our range record. She was testing capabilities and equipment under controlled conditions for applications we're not clear to know about." Morrison nodded understanding, which means that what we witnessed wasn't the full extent of her capabilities, but a demonstration of techniques and equipment that are being developed for operational use in environments where extreme precision is required. The implications were significant for military marksmanship training programs that suddenly seemed conservative compared to capabilities that were apparently being developed in classified research programs. The equipment Chen had used was available to qualified civilians, but her technique and precision suggested training methodologies that exceeded what was available through conventional military instruction. "Sergeant Patterson, I want you to revise our advanced marksmanship curriculum to incorporate lessons learned from Chen's demonstration. If civilian contractors are achieving this level of precision, our military snipers need training that prepares them for similar capabilities." Patterson understood that Chen's brief visit to Range 7 had implications that extended far beyond setting a new record. Her demonstration had revealed capabilities that suggested significant advances in precision shooting technique and equipment applications that were being developed outside conventional military channels, but which would eventually influence how military marksmanship was taught and applied. The bronze plaque that had dominated Range 7 for 20 years was quietly removed and replaced with new recognition that reflected not just improved performance standards, but acknowledgement that precision shooting capabilities were evolving more rapidly than military training programs had recognized. More importantly, Chen's achievement had demonstrated that exceptional marksmanship capabilities were being developed in applications where precision requirements exceeded anything in conventional military experience, and that the boundaries of what was possible in extreme long-range shooting were expanding through research and development programs whose full scope remained classified, but whose results were beginning to influence operational capabilities. 6 months after Chen's record-breaking performance at Range 7, Patterson received authorization to access additional information about her background and the projects that had developed her extraordinary marksmanship capabilities. The briefing he received was conducted by personnel whose credentials indicated involvement in classified programs that developed specialized capabilities for applications where conventional military training was inadequate. "Master Sergeant Patterson, Ms. Chen's demonstration at your facility was part of a research program that develops precision shooting capabilities for counterterrorism applications where extreme accuracy is required under conditions that exceed normal combat scenarios," the briefing officer explained. Her work involves testing and refining techniques that allow operatives to engage targets at distances and under conditions where conventional sniper training would be ineffective. Patterson understood that he was receiving information about programs whose existence was acknowledged only to personnel with specialized clearances and whose applications were classified to protect operational security. But the briefing helped explain how Chen had achieved precision that exceeded his experience and understanding of what was possible in marksmanship applications. The techniques Ms. Chen demonstrated represent advances in ballistics calculation, environmental assessment, and shooting technique that have been developed through field testing and applications where mission success required precision that exceeded existing military standards. The briefing continued. "Her record at your facility was validation testing for equipment and procedures that are being prepared for operational deployment. The explanation clarified that Chen's achievement at Range 7 had been significant not just as a marksmanship demonstration, but as confirmation that precision shooting capabilities were being developed to levels that exceeded what was available through conventional military training programs. Her success had validated research and development efforts that would eventually influence how military snipers were trained and equipped for missions requiring extreme precision. Sir, Patterson asked, are these capabilities being incorporated into standard military marksmanship training programs? Selected elements are being introduced gradually, but the full scope of the program remains classified for operational security reasons. What you observed was a demonstration of capabilities that are being developed for specific applications where conventional training methods are inadequate. Patterson understood that Chen's brief visit to Range 7 had provided him with a glimpse of developments in precision shooting that were occurring in classified programs whose applications exceeded what he was cleared to know about. Her record-breaking performance had been impressive as a marksmanship demonstration, but it was significant as an indication of capabilities that were being developed for operational requirements that pushed the boundaries of what was possible in precision shooting applications. The information also explained why Chun had conducted her record attempt with systematic preparation and professional execution that exceeded casual or recreational shooting. Her demonstration had been part of a research and development program that required validation testing under controlled conditions to confirm that equipment and techniques performed the specifications required for operational deployment. Master Sergeant Patterson, your professional documentation of Ms. Chen's demonstration was valuable for validating the research and development program she represents. Your facility provided control conditions necessary for testing capabilities that will eventually contribute to operational effectiveness in applications where extreme precision is required. Patterson realized that Range 7 had served not just as a location for setting a new record, but as a testing facility for capabilities that were being developed in classified programs whose applications would influence future military operations in ways he wasn't clear to understand fully. The bronze plaque that had been replaced after Chen's demonstration would eventually be joined by recognition of other advances in precision shooting capabilities, as research and development programs continued to push the boundaries of what was possible in marksmanship applications. But Chen's achievement will be remembered as a moment when conventional understanding of precision shooting limitations was challenged by capabilities that had been developed through classified research programs whose full scope remained unknown, but whose results were beginning to influence operational capabilities. Years later, when Patterson became involved in training programs that incorporated advanced marksmanship techniques, he would recognize elements of the precision and methodology that Chen had demonstrated during her brief visit to Range 7. Her record-breaking performance had been an early indication of developments in precision shooting that would eventually become standard capabilities for military snipers whose missions required accuracy that exceeded previous limitations. But Patterson would also remember Chen as someone whose achievements represented not just individual skill, but systematic development of capabilities through research programs that operated beyond conventional military training. Her demonstration had shown him that precision shooting was evolving through applications where accuracy requirements exceeded what was possible through standard training methods, and that the boundaries of what was achievable in marksmanship were expanding through classified programs whose contributions to operational effectiveness would never be fully acknowledged or understood. Some records are broken by incremental improvements in equipment or technique. Others are shattered by capabilities that represent fundamental advances in understanding what is possible when specialized requirements drive research and development beyond conventional limitations. Chen's achievement at Range 7 belonged to the second category, a demonstration of precision that redefined expectations and revealed capabilities that were being developed in applications where extreme accuracy was not competitive or recreational, but operationally critical for missions whose nature remained classified, but whose requirements had produced marksmanship skills that exceeded everything in Patterson's experience. The range record that had stood for 20 years was replaced by a new standard that reflected not just improved performance, but acknowledgement that precision shooting capabilities were advancing through research and development programs whose applications exceeded conventional military training. Chen's brief visit to Range 7 had provided a glimpse of those advances, a demonstration of what was possible when specialized requirements and classified resources combined to push the boundaries of human precision beyond what had previously been considered achievable. In the world of military marksmanship, where precision is measured in millimeters and capabilities are constantly tested against evolving requirements, Chen's demonstration represented a moment when the impossible became routine and the boundaries of human achievement were expanded through systematic development of skills that exceeded conventional understanding. Her record would eventually be surpassed by others whose training incorporated the techniques and capabilities she had helped develop. But her achievement at Range 7 would be remembered as the moment when precision shooting entered a new era of capability that had been developed through classified programs whose applications remained unknown, but whose contributions to operational effectiveness were beginning to influence how military marksmanship was understood and applied. The bronze plaque that now marked her achievement would serve not just as recognition of exceptional marksmanship, but as acknowledgement that precision shooting capabilities were evolving through research and development programs whose scope exceeded conventional military training, and whose applications were expanding the boundaries of what was possible when specialized requirements drove systematic development of human performance beyond previously accepted limitations. But Chen's story was far from over. 3 months after her record-breaking demonstration at Fort Bragg, she reappeared at military facilities across the country, conducting similar demonstrations that left experienced marksmanship instructors questioning everything they thought they understood about the limits of human precision. At Camp Pendleton, she achieved 7 consecutive hits at 3,200 meters using equipment that Marine Corps snipers considered barely adequate for half that distance. At the Navy Special Warfare Training Facility in Coronado, she demonstrated shooting techniques that allowed accurate engagement of moving targets at ranges where conventional wisdom suggested such shots were impossible. Each demonstration followed the same pattern: systematic preparation, professional execution, and results that exceeded what experienced military personnel considered achievable with the equipment and conditions available. But Chen's appearances were becoming more than just marksmanship exhibitions. They were beginning to reveal the scope of classified research programs that were developing capabilities far beyond what was available through conventional military training. Master Sergeant Patterson received reports from colleagues at other facilities who had witnessed Chen's demonstrations, and a cumulative picture that emerged suggested systematic testing of capabilities across multiple environments and conditions. She wasn't just an exceptional marksman conducting isolated record attempts. She was validating techniques and equipment that were being developed for operational applications whose requirements exceeded anything in conventional military experience. Patterson. Colonel Morrison called him into a classified briefing room 6 months after Chen's visit to Range 7. "I want you to understand what you witnessed during that record attempt. Ms. Chun represents capabilities that are being developed for counterterrorism applications where conventional sniper training is inadequate for mission requirements." The briefing that followed revealed information that explained not just Chen's exceptional marksmanship, but the systematic nature of her demonstrations at military facilities nationwide. She was part of a classified research program that developed precision shooting capabilities for operations where targets had to be engaged at extreme ranges under conditions that exceeded normal combat scenarios. The techniques she demonstrated represent years of research into ballistics, atmospheric sciences, and human performance optimization, Colonel Morrison explained. Her work involves developing methods that allow operatives to achieve precision that exceeds what we previously considered the theoretical limits of rifle shooting. Patterson learned that Chen's background included advanced degrees in physics and engineering, combined with field experience and applications where precision shooting was not recreational, but operationally critical for missions whose nature remained classified. Her consulting work involved testing equipment and techniques under controlled conditions to validate capabilities that would eventually be deployed in situations where failure meant not just mission failure, but potential loss of innocent lives. "Sir," Patterson asked, "are these capabilities being incorporated into our training programs?" Selected elements are being introduced gradually, but the full scope of the program involves capabilities that exceed what can be taught through conventional military training. What Chen demonstrated requires not just exceptional shooting skills, but understanding of advanced ballistics calculations and environmental assessment techniques that are normally handled by computer systems. The explanation revealed that Chen's achievements represented not just individual skill, but systematic development of human capabilities that exceeded what was possible through normal training methods. Her demonstrations had been validation testing for research programs that were pushing the boundaries of what humans could accomplish when specialized requirements drove development beyond conventional limitations. Patterson understood that he had witnessed something that represented the intersection of advanced technology, specialized training, and individual capabilities that had been developed through research programs whose applications exceeded a security clearance to understand fully. But the implications were clear. Precision shooting capabilities were evolving through classified programs whose contributions would eventually influence military operations in ways that were beginning to reshape how marksmanship was understood and applied. A year after Chen's record-breaking performance, Patterson was assigned to a classified training program that incorporated elements of the techniques she had demonstrated. The program, known only by its code designation, Precision Enhancement Initiative, brought together the most skilled military marksmen from all service branches to learn methods that exceeded conventional sniper training. The instructors of the program included personnel whose backgrounds remained classified, but whose capabilities clearly exceeded what was available through normal military channels. They taught ballistics calculations that accounted for atmospheric variables that conventional training ignored, environmental assessment techniques that allowed accurate shooting under conditions where normal methods would be ineffective, and equipment modifications that enhanced precision without compromising reliability. Sergeant Patterson, the lead instructor, approached him during the first week of training. Your documentation of the Fort Bragg demonstration was valuable for validating techniques that are now being incorporated into this program. You observe capabilities that represent years of research and development in applications where extreme precision is operationally critical. Patterson recognized that the instruction he was receiving incorporated elements of the systematic preparation and professional execution that Chen had demonstrated during her record attempt. The ballistics calculations, environmental assessment methods, and shooting techniques were similar to what he had observed, but adapted for military applications where operational security and equipment standardization were necessary considerations. The training program revealed that Chen's achievements had been part of a larger effort to develop precision shooting capabilities that exceeded conventional limitations through systematic research and development. Her demonstrations at military facilities had served not just as record attempts, but as validation testing for techniques that were being prepared for operational deployment in applications where extreme precision was required under conditions that challenged existing training methods. The capabilities you observe represent advances in precision shooting that are being developed for counterterrorism applications where targets must be engaged at extreme ranges under conditions that exceed normal combat scenarios, the instructor explained. These techniques are being incorporated into training programs for personnel whose missions require capabilities that exceed conventional sniper training. Patterson understood that he was participating in the operational implementation of research that Chen had helped develop and validate. The training he was receiving would eventually prepare him for missions where precision shooting requirements exceeded what was possible through conventional military training, and where capabilities that had seemed impossible during Chen's demonstration would become standard operational tools. The program also revealed the scope of classified research that was being conducted to develop human performance capabilities beyond what had previously been considered achievable. Chen's marksmanship represented not just individual skill, but systematic development of techniques that enhance human precision through methods that combined advanced technology, specialized training, and understanding of variables that conventional instruction didn't address. Months later, when Patterson began applying these techniques in operational environments, he recognized the significance of what Chen had demonstrated during her brief visit to Range 7. Her record-breaking performance had been an early indication of capabilities that were being developed through research programs whose applications were beginning to influence military operations in ways that exceeded conventional understanding of what was possible in precision shooting. But Patterson also understood that Chen's achievements represented something larger than military applications. Her work involved developing human capabilities that exceeded traditional limitations through systematic research and specialized training that could be applied to challenges requiring precision that surpassed what was achievable through conventional methods. The bronze plaque that marked her record at Range 7 had become more than recognition of exceptional marksmanship. It served as acknowledgement that human performance capabilities were evolving through research programs that pushed the boundaries of what was possible when specialized requirements drove systematic development beyond conventional limitations. Years later, when Patterson became an instructor in advanced marksmanship programs. He would tell students about the day when a civilian contractor had redefined his understanding of what was achievable in precision shooting. But he would also emphasize that Chen's demonstration had revealed capabilities that were being developed through research and application programs whose scope exceeded individual achievement and represented systematic efforts to enhance human performance in applications where conventional limitations were inadequate for operational requirements. Chen's brief visit to Range 7 had provided a glimpse of developments in precision shooting that were occurring in classified programs whose applications remained largely unknown, but whose contributions to operational effectiveness were beginning to influence how military marksmanship was understood and applied. Her record would be remembered not just as exceptional individual achievement, but as indication of capabilities that were being developed through systematic research programs whose scope exceeded conventional military training, and whose applications were expanding the boundaries of what was possible when specialized requirements drove development of human performance beyond previously accepted limitations. The range where she had demonstrated these capabilities continued to serve as a training facility for military personnel whose missions required precision that exceeded conventional training standards. But it also served as a reminder that the boundaries of human achievement were constantly being expanded through research and development programs whose applications exceeded what was visible through conventional military training, and whose contributions to operational effectiveness were beginning to reshape understanding of what was possible when specialized requirements and classified resources combined to push the limits of human capability beyond what had previously been considered achievable. Some achievements represent individual excellence within existing limitations. Others reveal capabilities that redefine what is possible when systematic research and specialized training combine to develop human performance beyond conventional boundaries. Chen's demonstration at Range 7 belonged to the second category, a glimpse of capabilities that were being developed through classified programs whose applications exceeded conventional understanding, but whose contributions were beginning to influence how precision shooting was approached in applications where extreme accuracy was not competitive or recreational, but operationally critical for missions whose success depended on capabilities that exceeded what had previously been considered the limits of human precision. Chat Control Sonnet 4.